Outer or closer, a little bit.
All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Again, my name is Lance Beck. I'm the President and CEO of the Greater Spokane Valley Chamber of Commerce. Joining us today and leading the call, we also have Alicia Benson with GSI and Toby Romling with the West Plains Chamber of Commerce. I'm going to go ahead and get us started here today. So again, thank you for joining us. Quite a few of you on the line here, just over 300. So a couple procedure-wise, what we're going to ask is that you go ahead and type your questions throughout the call into the group chat. We anticipate not being able to answer all questions, obviously, but our teams between the three chambers will make every effort to follow up with everyone following the call if your question should not be answered during the call. We have a great lineup of speakers. Thank you to them for joining us today. I'd like to shift over to Alicia Benson, again, CEO of Greater Spokane Incorporated, for a couple of remarks.
Thank you, Lance, and good afternoon, everybody. It's excellent to have such a great turnout for really important conversations as we all come together to work together to support the community and the business community and the response and recovery with COVID-19. And so great lineup that Lance and team have put forth today. I just want to make sure that folks know we're working GSI as the regional economic development organization, or what they call ADO for the region, is part of the emergency management system and deeply engaged. I have a team member that's pretty much spending all day, every day with the response team. And as a result of that, part of what we're standing up on the GSI website, but then it'll actually have a single link that all of us can use across the region, is a whole set of COVID resources. And so we'll have a neutral link that is all about Spokane business resources for COVID that'll be available that can help. It is live already if you go to greaterspokane.org. But we want to make sure that as partners between Lance and Toby and our chamber organizations, that we're getting the most relevant and important information into the hands of you as quickly as possible. And in turn, working with our municipal partners to ensure that they have the most relevant feedback and information back to them in response to supporting our community as well. So we're just really appreciative of that opportunity to come together. And this is, as we always say, new waters for all of us. So we want your feedback, each of us, so that we can continue to do great work together.
All right, thank you, Alicia. Toby, I think you're on the line there. If we could have you unmute.
Yeah, Toby Bremling from the West Plains Chamber. We just want to say thank you as well for being on the call. And also just kind of thank you to Alicia Benson from GSI and Lance Beck from Greater Spokane Valley, and really all of our other chambers throughout the region. It's been an interesting week, but a celebration is just the collaborative nature of our entire region coming together to provide and hear from our businesses and our members, especially our small business owners, which is really kind of how this whole call came about, was hearing a lot of the uncertainty, the difficulty navigating the waters. What are those next steps? And sometimes that uncertainty brings about panic. And so hopefully, I just want to say thank you to just the nature of our region to be able to come together to put something like this on. That said, I do want to mention, Alicia mentioned just your feedback is important. And so all of us put together kind of an regional impact survey. So if you have not had a chance to fill that out or submit that, please do that. That data is very helpful as we navigate this storm. But again, thank you. And together, we're going to get through this.
Thanks, Toby. And we will have the link for that regional impact survey in the group chat here momentarily. So copy that down. And again, that is key for us to be able to understand where to direct our resources as your area chambers to help facilitate future programming here as we move through the coming days and weeks in this process. So at this time, I'd like to welcome our first speaker. We're privileged to have Congresswoman Cathy McMorris Rodgers with us on the line. Congresswoman, if you could unmute at this time, and we'll turn it over to you. Camille, we're being told Cathy is on a phone, so can you unmute her? I can, we'll get you her number here.
I'm not seeing her by name. Is she in there by numbers? She under another name?
By number. I will send this to you right now.
So to unmute, press *6. If you're a speaker, press *6 to unmute.
Okay. Yay. Okay. Am I here? Can you hear me?
Yes, you are.
Okay, great. Thank you, Lance, Alicia, Toby. Really appreciate you bringing us all together. Clearly, life has changed dramatically for us in a short amount of time. And part of my goal is to make sure that we're answering as many questions as possible, giving information. But I'd also like to hear from you as far as what you think the response that the federal government within Congress needs to be. It was just 2 weeks ago that the president, well, it's actually a week ago that the president declared the state of emergency. So just a week ago on Friday. And that same day, I was on a conference call with Larry Kudlow, who is the president's chief economic advisor. And he wanted to impress upon us that our fundamentals are strong in our economy. And that's part of what I want to just start with today, because there is a lot of fear. There's a lot of unknowns, a lot of anxiety associated with the public health crisis that has become an economic crisis also. That Larry Kudlow, in advising the president, really believes that our fundamentals are strong. If we can get through this quickly, he believes that we will come out of it as quickly as we took the dive in the markets and in our economy. I also this week have been on conference calls with a lot of different folks, including Treasury Secretary Mnuchin, and it is his priority right now to focus on our small businesses. Clearly, as we have addressed the public health crisis, we have shut down big parts of our economy. And our focus must be in providing fast relief to our small business owners and their employees to reduce the number of businesses that are closing or laying off employees. So my goal is to be doing everything I can to protect small businesses and workers. There's a huge impact across the board. Congress passed the first emergency response, the first bill that was signed into law just a week ago, really. I think it was even on Saturday, was focused on the diagnostic tests, the vaccine development, the funding for local and state responses. The second really built on that, covering the cost of testing for anyone, whether you're on Medicare, Medicaid, or get your insurance through private health insurance. As you know, right now, the Senate is working on the third package, and they are, Senator McConnell just last night unveiled a $1 trillion package as a part of the emergency response. That is being negotiated right now. I flew home on Saturday after the House passed our bill on Saturday morning. I flew home. It felt good to be able to hug my kids and be in Spokane. I've mostly been at home, been in the office some today and yesterday, but I am here. I am on 24-hour notice to get back to DC if the Senate agrees on something. I really appreciate SBA. I know they're also on the call. Small Business Administration so the entire state has been declared an emergency, which is going to release more money, more support through SBA. The administration has made this a priority to expedite anything that's available through SBA. You're going to hear more about that. Also, Mnuchin is focusing on relief through payroll taxes and the withholdings that you have to pay twice a week. And if we're more than 25% impacted, he's working with the IRS on relief that could be given immediately, almost like a cash advance. There's a lot on the table: unemployment insurance and the extension of unemployment, and also expanding unemployment to include a pandemic as being a disaster. Right now, tornadoes and floods are listed as disasters, but not pandemics. So there's a lot being done. I hear from small businesses every day that are quite concerned. I appreciate the chance to be with you. I want to help answer questions and help keep you open as much as possible. And I just would say that in the midst of all of this, in the midst of the crisis, I am also seeing everyday examples of American ingenuity, creativity, and resiliency. Just people in a whole host of ways that are stepping up to get us through it, and we will get through it together. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Congresswoman. Again, questions for the Congresswoman, please put those in the group chat area. We're taking those down, and we're going to get through the speakers and then circle back for questions once we get through the speakers. And so next up, we have Jeremy Field, the Regional Administrator for Small Business Administration. Jeremy, if you're on Zoom, please unmute. If you're on a phone, we're going to need you to type in which phone number you are.
Lance, he can also, I think, press *6 to unmute himself on it if he's just on a phone.
That's exactly what I needed to hear. Can everyone hear me?
We can.
Yes, you can.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with everyone today. And it's always good to hear the reassuring message from Representative Cathy McMorris Rodgers. So thank you for your service. We are at the SBA, we've been tasked to do something we've never done before, which is respond to a pandemic and kind of be the point of spear for small businesses to get through this. I think someone's going to have to hit me, or we're going to keep having that feedback. Okay. I'll keep talking, power through it here. But the SBA right now is in a position to move forward and lend like we always have to small businesses. With the disaster declaration, we have the ability to lend up to $2 million with disaster loans. These are called EIDL loans, economic impact disaster loans. And if you go to sba.gov/disaster, you can show businesses where they can go. Hot links will lead to where you can go to apply online for small business disaster loans. Right now, it's really important to remember that the situation is very fluid. Members of Congress are working to give us, to help us beef up our programs more than normal. For example, right now we have, if you went through our lender match and applied for a line of credit, not a disaster loan, but just one of our typical loan programs, the cap is $350,000. Well, Senator Marco Rubio, who's the chairman of the Senate Small Business Committee, has proposed raising that up to $1 million for a line of credit. As well as if you get a disaster loan, if you use that to continue to pay your people through the entire the phenomena of the coronavirus, they're also suggesting that you could have that loan forgiven. So there's a lot of ideas up in the air right now, both from the White House and from Congress. And of course, we're carefully monitoring that to see how that moves forward. I want to let you know that the system right now is, it is slammed. As of yesterday, we had 700,000 small businesses apply for disaster loans just in California. And so we are working with our existing staff and moving through those applications as quickly as possible. If you apply for a disaster loan, don't be surprised if you experience a wait of up to 3 weeks, and it can take a week after that to get the funds. So it's important to get those applications in. Talk to your small business members of the chamber. Let them know that if they have bad credit, they're going to want to speak to organizations that can help them get into a better credit status. If you have a credit score of, I want to say it's 560 or below, you will be automatically declined for a disaster loan. There's other ways to be declined, but bad credit is the most common cause. There's a lot of organizations that can help you contest some of the items that might be on your credit history. So, reach out to those local entities that can help you do that. Oftentimes, if you know a micro lender in your area, for example, SNAP, I won't speak for them, but a lot of those micro lenders can help you get a better credit history. So if small businesses have that question, they know that they already have a very bad credit score. You'll want to tell them to first work to improve that credit score for a disaster loan. We are seeing more and more states come online with this disaster program. It's obviously a big deal, and we're working around the clock at the SBA. I have the phone calls are nonstop. It's kind of a thing where I have my personal phone and I have my laptop and I have my work phone, and one of them is vibrating or beeping at me at all times. So it's really busy at the SBA, but I can tell you that our staff are working hard and dedicated to helping small businesses get through this phenomena that is the coronavirus. And we're only going to get better at this. As we ramp up. So go to sba.gov/updates to get updates. Follow us on Twitter at SBA.gov. And if you want to know regional specifics, things you want to follow us at SBA Pacific NW, Pacific Northwest. And that's where you'll get the latest updates on what we're learning as we learn, because the situation is very fluid. But those are, if you want emails, go to sba.gov/updates. If you want to follow us on Twitter and keep us on an alarm, sba.gov and at SBA Pacific NW. And that's how you'll get the latest updates on what we're offering and how our services will be amped up from the efforts of Congress.
Okay, thank you, Jeremy. And I know, so everyone's aware on the regional site that we've propped up on GSI's webpage, the links for SBA are all included on that page, and that can help get you to the right section of the internet there to download the documents and forms for application that you need. Next up, we have Dan Zeitlin, Employment System Policy Director for the Employment Securities Department. Dan, if you have the ability, please unmute yourself now.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for inviting me onto the call. And I should say that my colleague, Mariana Hernandez, is on the call as well to help answer any questions that you have. These are unprecedented times, and I really appreciate the spirit of this call, bringing people together to share information. And as the Congresswoman rightly pointed out, we are all in this together and we will get through it together. So I appreciate the invitation to participate in this conversation. As you have all undoubtedly seen, we as a state have been absolutely flooded with new unemployment insurance initial claims. New unemployment claims increased over 116% during the week of March 8th to 14th. And we received 14,000 new claims during that week. And while I can't speak to specific numbers, I can say that this week's initial claim volume is greater than any single week we had during the Great Recession. So we're really in historic territory when it comes to unemployment insurance. And when you have that kind of influx of people, there are a myriad of issues that come of that. This crisis came suddenly, so we are, while we're trying to staff up, we're staffed in a way to manage a much lower volume of claimants. And when you have this many claimants, you have a lot of folks who are applying for unemployment insurance for the first time. So we're trying to get out as much guidance as possible to both workers and employers. We're trying to keep updates on our website, and we're trying to encourage patience from folks. So a key website for you all, and we can send out this and other, I think, important links later, but esd.wa.gov/newsroom/COVID-19 is a good website. It's full of FAQs and information about UI and other programs that we have, or variants of UI and other programs that we have to help both workers and employers during this difficult time. So a quick little primer on unemployment insurance. It covers individuals who worked 680 hours in their base year and otherwise meet qualifications. So that is somebody who worked 680 hours in the last 12 months, or can be configured in a way to be the last 18 months. So you do, of course, capture a large number of workers with that, but that also leaves some workers behind. There are also certain categories of workers that are exempt from UI, namely independent contractors, so they are not covered by regular UI, so that's another coverage gap that we have here. UI is also a partial wage replacement, so paid sick leave is an important tool. There are other important tools out there, but UI is a last resort, but as we see this crisis unfold, for many people, it becomes the only thing they can resort to. I think, as you all know, UI gets paid for mostly by employers who have an experience rate based on experience rated tax based on benefits paid out to former workers. Some other employers, like nonprofits, are reimbursable employers who must reimburse us for benefits paid as they are paid out, or shortly after they are paid out. Now, we put in place some emergency rules. I'll explain the rules here. I will say that the situation, as you all know, is quickly evolving and growing to a much larger scale. But we did put out some rules a couple weeks ago, and the rules do the following. Under our rules, workers are able to receive unemployment benefits, and employers get relief from those benefit charges I mentioned if an employer needs to curtail or shut down operations temporarily because a worker becomes sick and other workers need to be isolated or quarantined as a result of COVID-19. Another piece of the rulemaking, a worker that follows guidance issued by a medical or public health official to isolate or quarantine themselves as a result of COVID-19 and is not receiving paid sick leave from their employer, they may be eligible for unemployment benefits. The rule also removes the full-time requirement and expands standby ability to part-time and less than full-time workers who are isolated. So, and we have since, in fact, today, are expanding standby to allow it for up to 12 weeks. So basically what that means is if you have an employee and you have to let that employee go, but at least for the time being, you're hoping to weather this storm, bring the employee back on, that employee can be on, again, what we call standby. They can be on there for up to 12 weeks. And in that sort of standby mode, they are able to collect unemployment benefits. They don't have to search for work as they would otherwise have to do when they're on UI. And then you can retain that employee would come back to you. You retain the employee and don't have to go forward with recruiting new workers. So we're hopeful that's an important tool for businesses and workers that are able to weather the storm. The new rules also do a few other things to make provide some more leniency with regard to our program. So for workers, the new rules allow unemployment claimants who are impacted by COVID-19 more leniency about meeting UI deadlines and mandatory appointments. For employers, our rules waive financial penalties we would usually have for employees who file their tax reports late, pay their taxes late, or do not respond for requests for information in a timely fashion. I should also say, I'd mentioned experience ratings. The legislature passed and the state legislature passed and the governor signed into law a larger COVID-19 package that included a provision to establish a fund to help employers pay down their experience rated increases that result from the COVID-19 outbreak. I will say, again, as I've said before, this is growing exponentially larger. The fund has $25 million attached to it. What I can say to keep in mind about experience rated tax increases, Those tax calculations come in January, so January of 2021, and then are due in April, I think by April 30th. So for businesses who are out there concerned about all the unemployment insurance being paid out to workers and the impact it might have on experience ratings, it's certainly understandable. It's a issue that is known by the legislature, governor, and our agency. And I think again, we'll see how all of this plays out for businesses, and I imagine there'll be a real macro view, as there already is, in terms of how to provide businesses the relief they need as a result of this outbreak. On the federal level, I know the Congresswoman spoke to it. I should note that our governor asked the president to declare a major disaster, which would unlock individual assistance, including disaster unemployment assistance, to cover those who are not otherwise eligible for UI with federal funds. So this is a program that normally applies or has historically only applied when we've had a physical disaster. So for example, we had the Oso landslides in 2014. The governor requested and the president declared a major disaster for that. And so in those circumstances, you have sort of a disaster that's contained to one area, and then you're able to help folks impacted directly by that disaster, including those individuals I mentioned earlier, like independent contractors who are otherwise ineligible for UI. So the governor has requested that the president make that declaration. I also, as I understand, the Congress is considering whether there are provisions to put in that phase 3 bill that the Congresswoman referred to, possibly opening up a disaster unemployment assistance like program to cover more people with UI. One other program I do want to point out for those of you who are not familiar with it, it's a very popular program for both businesses and workers. It really is a win-win. It's called the Shared Work Program. Shared Work is a voluntary program. Employers can submit applications to us to reduce their worker hours, so they can reduce the hours of their full-time employees by as much as 50%, and then their workers will collect partial unemployment benefits to pay a portion of their lost wages. So it's another way to retain your workforce, reduce their hours, knowing that they're getting some supplemental income from the Employment Security Department. And again, it's a really good worker retention program. So we can certainly send out more information about that. We've gotten, and I don't have the figures on that one, but along with the monstrous UI figures I mentioned before, we have seen a very high, I think 500% increase week over week interest and application approval in our shared work program. So I'm happy to send that out, and some broader sort of layoff assistance program information out to you all. Again, we have programs that are built for this type of situation to help both workers and employers, and we're hopeful that that they can help here. So thank you again for inviting me to the call.
Thank you, Dan. We are awaiting Gary Chandler's arrival, so we're going to jump through a few questions in the interim. Dan, we had quite a bit of interest here in the for help on employers and employees as far as independent contractors go, or business owners such as salons, nail care, etc. Is there help for these individuals besides a small business loan?
So let me speak to that, and then Mariana can chime in if I'm missing anything. A key thing to remember, again, is the 680-hour requirement. So we do encourage folks to apply. It could be that you've been one of those exempt individuals for a month, but you've otherwise had 680 hours in your base year with another employer who is covered. But at the end of the day, those folks that are exempt in our state statute, those independent contractors won't qualify for regular UI, so that in that respect, that makes either a disaster declaration, major disaster declaration by the president or Congress. In this phase 3 bill, the Congresswoman referred to creating a disaster unemployment assistance like structure is critical for us to be able to provide UI to those folks who are not otherwise covered. Mariana, do you have anything to add on that?
Okay, Dan, and then one other follow-up to the shared work program. Do those employees have to be hourly based employees, or would employers have to shift them to an hourly base if they were exempt already?
I think on that one, you can take folks who are salaried, and we can calculate what their hours would be. I think if they're salaried and paid overtime, one thing we're looking, those people who are salaried and paid overtime, or not paid overtime, I should say, are currently exempt. So we're looking at our rules to possibly open it up to them as well. So to clarify, if you're hourly, or if you're salaried and you work overtime, we can make the calculation to figure out how much you get paid hourly and put you into shared work. If you're salaried but you don't get overtime, that is an exemption that we're looking to change in our rule.
Okay.
So we're close to making it available to everybody.
Perfect. We'll give you a break for a minute. If we could switch back over to the Congresswoman. Cathy, we had a question come in regards to the Family First Coronavirus Relief Act, and the combination of that act had a carve out where if you had to stay home to take care of a child who was put out of school because school's been closed. Can you elaborate on that program and how it integrates in a state like Washington, where we have both state and federal FMLA laws?
Now, that's a good question. I'm not sure that I know the details of how it relates to a state like Washington. What we included in that bill was a benefit for 14 days that the federal government will actually reimburse the small business for that cost that is incurred.
And I think I'm not the subject matter expert on this oops. I'm sorry, can you hear me? This is Dan with ESD. I can comment on that too.
Go ahead, Dan.
That'd be great.
And I must say I'm not the subject matter expert on either what the congressional bill did or necessarily the paid family medical leave program, but as I understand it, what Congress is doing is very critical because it would provide paid sick leave for folks. So it's kind of filling that gap, or at least delaying the point at which you'd have to start collecting unemployment insurance. So if you had 14 days of paid sick leave, we would encourage anyone who already has paid sick leave or might get it through the federal government to take that paid sick leave. That gets you however long of your full paycheck, and then see where you're at. And then UI is more of a last resort, because then at that point you are only getting partial wage replacement. And so I think what Congress is trying to do is fill that gap. Our state paid family medical leave program is for folks who are either diagnosed or have a family member who's diagnosed with a serious health condition. So that comes into play more in sort of for the longer term. If you yourself have a serious case of COVID-19 and or have to care for a family member who does.
Well, that would probably be SBA.
Okay, we're going to shift over. Jeremy, we've got a few questions for you with SBA. Are you still on the line here?
Yes, I am.
Okay, perfect. Starting off, as a business, if we have cash flow now but believe we may run out of available funds on our current line of credit in our cash, can we still apply now for the disaster loan to make sure we have funds in the future available for paying our employees?
100%. Yeah, definitely. Just again, you apply through that portal, and you can have the funds sitting there just in case. And that's a really good idea, since it can take a month to get those funds. So I would encourage them to do that.
Jeremy, this is Sushil from the Office of Disaster Assistance. If you have any questions of me, I'll be glad to pick them also.
Oh, and you guys, that means if you have some really technical questions about the application process, they can be answered today. So thanks for being on the call.
Thank you, sir.
And then Jeremy, we had a follow-up. If will SBA be loosening the requirements for high growth companies that are running at a loss?
All that is statute, and so we anticipate having more flexibility with who and how we loan, but I can't speak to that directly, because it's just what we can do is still, because after disaster loans, we're really still working in our lane of the loans we've given before. So the test is if you are good, if you have a good business plan and you have good credit, and the people feel like you have the know-how to do something, and you've been doing it for a long time, or just started, but you're very competent, and those are the requirements to get a loan and get it guaranteed by the SBA. So in a very broad sense. So if really the details, I'd have to know more details to speak to it, but I can definitely get that. Whoever asked that question, if you could have them email me. My email is Jeremy, JEREMY .field, FIELD @SBA.gov. And if you email me, I'll repeat it one more time after this. If you email me, I'll get that to one of our lender relations specialists and have them give you a call, so you can talk about the details of your company. Does that sound good? So I'll repeat it. It's JEREMY .FIELD @SBA.gov.
Thank you, Jeremy. And we had Colin Tracy from our team added that to the chat field for those trying to write it down. Dan, we had a question come in. Will there be a specific unemployment application developed to COVID-19?
No, I don't think so. We certainly encourage folks to call online. We are trying to put together as much guidance as possible to make it easy for folks to be ready and know how the program works and what's expected to when you apply. But I don't think, unless Mariana is aware of something, I'm not aware of anything particular in the works that related specifically to COVID-19.
Okay, and then Dan, we had another one. Can a business implement emergency paid sick leave now and still be reimbursed, or do they have to wait until April 1st?
I don't think I'm following that question. Maybe we can get back to that. Someone can clarify the question.
We'll come back to that one. I believe it's with the April 1st date from, this might be related to the Family First Act, because I believe that implements on the 2nd. Apologize, probably a question for Cathy's team as a follow-up there that we can get back to. I believe it's Doug on the call that had placed that. So Doug will follow up with you there.
Okay, and I should say again, it's important to, another thing that we can send out when we respond to additional questions you might have or otherwise is we have a great chart that we can share with everybody on the phone that basically shows different scenarios and shows you when paid sick leave might apply, when what UI might apply, when workers' comp might apply, when paid family medical leave might apply, because these are different programs meant to meet different needs and apply in different scenarios. So I think seeing that sort of chart will be helpful for folks. We'll definitely make sure to get that out. But we do want to distinguish between, when you're getting UI, that is because you have lost your job through no fault of your own, separate and apart from, you know, a paid sick leave. So if somebody's getting paid sick leave, at best, maybe those wages would be deducted from UI, but you really want to keep these things sort of distinguishable in your head.
Okay, and Congresswoman, if we still have you on here, follow-up came in regards to what is the turnaround time on the reimbursement to employers if they have to pay out up to 12 weeks of FMLA? We've heard everything from 1 week to a month. We are concerned that some companies may not have cash on hand to sustain prolonged payments of even 2/3 of their original pay.
Mm-hmm. I think that's what Secretary Mnuchin is working to get out as soon as possible. What we passed in the legislation was 14 days of family medical leave, if it is coronavirus related or a family member with coronavirus.
Okay, thank you. We're doing one more check here. See if Gary Chandler from AWB had made it on yet. Give him some time. Give us just a second. Okay, we've got a few more minutes. Any other questions? So it looks like we had Janae coming in. The 14 days is not FMLA, it's emergency paid sick leave. Clarifying that there. It looks like we've got Gary logging on right now, so he'll be with us in just a moment.
Is it right? This is Jeremy Field again. Is it okay if I take a moment to plug our resource partners?
Yes, please.
Okay. Well, and I'm sure you're all familiar with everyone on this call, but we give grant dollars to 4 agencies to help do the counseling services for the Small Business Administration. The Small Business Development Centers, the SCORE chapters, our Women's Business Centers, and finally the Veterans Business Outreach Centers. So if you know a small business that's looking for some help putting together a loan package, maybe they're the kind of small business that has their finances in the shoebox with a bunch of receipts, have them go talk to one of those 4 entities. And I know they're in Spokane. They're such a great small business environment. There are so many organizations that will help a small business, get their financials in order in preparation to apply for a disaster loan or any of the other SBA's loan products. So remember that the Small Business Development Centers, the SCORE chapters, Women's Business Centers, and our VBox. But again, I've always been so impressed every time I go to Spokane and I see the services that are available to small businesses. There's quite a network of cooperation there. So I think it's I can't speak highly enough of Spokane, and I've echoed that in headquarters in DC, and the secret's out.
Camille, it looks like we have a user on there with the raised hand function. Could you call on them? Addressing one other question that we had come in regards to the emergency services, what we can, it's going to be hard for us to speak to the breadth of that question. However, what we can speak to is that the county's emergency command center has been propped up, and that has all of our governmental agencies working together here, led by our emergency response, both fire and police. So both the independent police departments as well as the Sheriff's Department here for Spokane County. And then all fire districts are involved in that. And so from a business relations stance, we have one of GSI's staff is our liaison to that team that is located at the ECC on a daily basis there. And so we're trying to communicate information out. I am not sure how to answer the question in regards to the smaller police departments and transfer of services from departments that might have additional staffing. So we'll have to follow up with you on that. We can attest that all of our Spokane County agencies are working together to ensure coverage, and certainly one of the areas of concern is if officers are required to, both officers in fire and paramedic response required to be out due to a illness or having to cover home life. And so as of now, it seems like there is sufficient coverage, and that's not an area of high concern, although they are monitoring that situation closely between all the leadership team there. Alicia, if you could provide anything else. I don't know if Kara's on the call or not there.
Lance, I unmuted the web person who had their hand raised.
I see it looks like that might have been by accident.
And I am on, Lance. This is Kara.
Okay. Add to that, Kara.
Yeah, I am meeting. I am part of the Emergency Command Center policy discussion every morning at 8 a.m. And then we have a joint information center meeting every day at 11 a.m. And in between those times, so the policy discussion has electeds from all municipalities, the county, the whole EMS team, the disaster folks that have come in from out of the area. It's a pretty robust discussion. And then it is fed through to the Joint Information Center, where we are prepping messages, consistent messages throughout all the channels, really from the city and county and health district. We are getting on the same page. It is this stuff does take time, and I just urge some patience with standing up all of these infrastructures and how we're all working together. But I see it coming together. Not as quickly as I'm sure everyone on the phone wants to, but that work is getting underway and standing up really specific work groups to address some of these pieces. I'll have more on that later today and tomorrow. We'll work through several hours on the weekend to have that determined. But I know that there's a lot of things being discussed. I really am kind of the liaison with Alicia and Lance and Toby, and bringing all of our concerns to the table to this group, understanding that their main focus is to handle the health crisis as it is, but all understand on this call, know that our business crisis, it will lag behind the health crisis, and until we can get our arms around the health crisis, our business folks are treading water at the very best. So there are high levels of concern that I am sharing with that group of folks from businesses that we are hearing from every day around our region, and frankly from around the state. And there is a high stress level with many businesses. And we hear you. We are pushing forward that message with all of our local, state, and federal folks at this time. And just know that your business voice is being pushed, and that's my number one focus. That's GSI's number one focus, and Lance's and Toby's and INBA and all of these organizations that are really our goal is to wrap around you and lift up your concerns and really figure out, especially during these kind of uncharted waters, how we can work together to ensure everyone really gets through this whole.
Thanks, Kara. And Mariana, are you still on there to speak to a couple of the standby questions?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. So I am seeing, hello everybody, my name is Mariana Hernandez with Employment Security Department. I'm seeing a lot of questions in regards to standby. So a couple things, like Dan stated, we recently will be changing to allow standby up to 12 weeks We just wanted to point out to keep in mind that because these are new changes that are coming into our agency, we are working around the clock to make sure that our IT systems support this. One of the things that a lot of our customers are seeing is that when they apply for standby, they may receive a denial letter. And that's just simply because our system is still being worked on to be able to accommodate to the allowable weeks based on our emergency rules that we've put in place. I'm also seeing questions in regards to if the standby applies after the standard of applying for UI. A claimant can go ahead and request standby at the time that they're submitting their application. So they can go ahead and submit that if they have a return to work date. So that's very key. As an employer, if you have an idea of when you will be bringing these folks back to work, please go ahead and provide those to them. So when they are filing their application, they can go ahead and enter that information in. Our claim center staff is currently working to address all of those denials that our customers are seeing and reissue approval letters to those that is applicable. So we just wanted to provide a little bit of that information. I am collecting all of the questions that I see that are in regards to unemployment benefits, and Dan and myself will circle back with Colin and provide some guidance and some answers to those, along with also resources. I also have that many of you wanted a copy of the different chart that shows the different programs that you may be eligible for. So we'll also be providing those as well.